Hey everybody, today I'm taking a look at Forest Shuffle, which is a 2 to 5 player card game designed by Kosh and published by Lookout Games. This one takes around 45 to 60 minutes to play. Now before I get started on my review of Forest Shuffle, I want to give a shout out to the show sponsor KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer, and if you use the link in my show notes or the QR code, then you can get a 5% off your first order. Okay, so Forest Shuffle is a tableau building set collection game that's going to look like this as you progress. So essentially you are building your own little forest out there, which is going to consist of these trees as well as these little critters and insects and little mushrooms and things that tuck behind the trees. Now the objective of the game is to get as many points as you can by synergizing these cards together as much as possible. The game is going to end when 3 of these Winter is Coming cards is revealed from this large stack of cards, and depending on the player count there are going to be more or fewer of these cards in the deck. So if you're only playing with 2 players, for example, quite a large stack of these cards will not be used. Now, of course, I have progressed the game here somewhat just to show you some scoring examples momentarily, but at the start of the game, you're actually going to start with nothing in your forest at all, except for this cave card, which can potentially synergize with some other cards and get you some additional points. You're going to start with a hand of 6 cards, which come in 2 different types. You have the trees themselves, which will come in different types of trees, as well as these other cards, which are either split half and half in terms of the top and bottom, or to the left and right, as you can see with cards like this. Now the information on the cards is pretty simple, where in the top left-hand corner is the amount of other cards you must discard in order to play one of these. You have a little suit type here, which can be important when it comes to kind of scoring abilities and stuff like that, as well as some additional information at the bottom, again with more symbology relating to different scoring options. And also some bonuses and things. So a lot of the times you'll have like a scoring criteria here. So you can see this silver fir will say I'll get 2 points per attached card to the silver fir. But sometimes you'll have an additional bonus, and even a special bonus that looks like this, whereas if you pay for this card involving all of cards of a certain color, then you'll get this bonus as well. But that's not always on the cards, and sometimes you'll get the bonus regardless if you play with any cards, essentially like this one. The beach card will let me draw a card once I've played it. So mechanically the game could not be more simple. You have one of 2 options that you can do on your turn. The first of which is to draw 2 cards, and when you draw those cards you can either draw them from the top of the deck and add them to your hand, bearing in mind you have a limit of 10 cards in your hand, or you can draw them from the clearing here, which will start to fill up when people start playing cards. So let's just talk about how that works now. So let's say, for example, I wanted to play, without thinking too much, let's say I wanted to play this little wood ant here. I'd have to discard 1 card. Again, without thinking about it, let's get rid of this horse chestnut. Now this card would get put into the clearing, meaning that it can now be drafted by another player in any combination. So when I said you can draw 2 cards, you can draw one from here and one from here, both from here, both from there. It is entirely up to you. And when you play or pay for that card, you're going to tuck this card under one of your trees, as long as you have room for it, because as a general rule, each tree can only ever have 1 card tucked to the left, right, to the upper and the lower part of the card. So let's say we play for that fire ant, it would go under this card like so, meaning that's going to get me 2 points, because it's going to get me 2 points per card below a tree. That might mean that my strategy might be I want to start building loads of cards below trees. So once you've either drawn your cards or played a card, you are going to check if the clearing has 10 or more cards there. And if it has, then you are going to wipe those trees off and put them in a discard pile to start the clearing again. There is an additional way that the clearing gets filled up, and that is whenever you play a tree card. And when you play these tree cards, not only will you have to pay the cost, you'll also draw another card from the top of the deck and put it into the clearing to give more options to the other players. Additionally, there is one extra rule where if you don't have any tree cards in your hand and you wanted to play one, you can play the reverse side of any card as a kind of just kind of a dummy tree really, with no special abilities, but it gives you another option to start building around. And that is essentially how the game works. As I said, you'll keep on taking these turns until 3 of these Winter is Coming cards are revealed from the deck, and they have been shuffled into the lower third of the deck. So, you know, you're going to go through quite a few cards before they come out. And at the end, you're going to calculate all your points based on the trees you've collected, based on the cards above and below, the left and the right, and any extra points you may get from cards that you've put onto your cave. The player with the most points will be the winner. Okay, so now we know how to play for a shuffle. I think it's more important to talk about the cards themselves because, you know, mechanically this game could not be more simple. Draw cards or play a card, simple as that. But where the game really lies is in the cards themselves. There are so many cards here and tons of different ways that you can score points and even build a little bit of an engine. And let's talk about how some of these cards work. So you can see that these butterfly cards, you want to be collecting as many different types as you can. You can get a massive 20 points if you get them, and they're nice and cheap to play as well because you do not have to discard anything. You've got this raccoon here that says you can play any number of cards from your hand into your cave and draw an equal amount of cards back. So if you've got a dud bunch of cards that you don't really want to do much with, then you can get rid of them and get a ton of points that way and replenish your hand. You've got this like bullfinch here that says you get 2 points for every bug symbol. So you can already start to see how these butterflies will start to synergize with these because these are bugs and they'll get you 2 points per bug. So that's 2 different ways you're going to score for those butterflies. You've got the brown bear that says you can place all cards from the clearing into your cave. So you might want to trigger that card when the clearing is absolutely full of cards and you can get, you know, even more than 10 points in a single card play there. But bearing in mind it's going to cost you 3 cards in order to play that card in the first place. You've got the toad here that lets you break a rule by playing 2 toads below a single tree. And if you have a pair, that's going to get you 5 points. You've got the lynx that says you get 10 points if you have at least 1 roe deer in your forest. And you can see here, I've got that roe deer. So you can really start to see how you're starting to build up these different sets. And you know, a single card can contribute to multiple sets at the same time. And we're not even talking about the actual trees themselves yet, because the trees themselves actually have abilities. Like you can see here that the linden tree gets you a point or 3 points if you have more linden trees than anybody else. You've got a little bit of an area control thing going on there. You got the beech trees that say if there's at least 4 beeches in your forest, then you'll get 5 points. But this one gives you a nice ability to draw a card once you play it. You've got the silver fir, which I think we've talked about before, where you know you get 2 points per card attached to the silver fir, so that you want to really build around these. You've got the oak trees that say you get 10 points if all 8 of the different tree types are in your forest. You've got the horse chestnut, which gives you another set collection bonus there, the more horse chestnuts you have. I didn't even talk about the mushroom trees, which will give you ongoing benefits, which says that, you know, whenever you play a card with the kind of paw print symbol, you'll get to draw a card. So again, you can really see how all these different things are trying to work together, and a single card will be scoring multiple categories, and it's all about trying to points max every single card you play. And I also do love this mechanism of the almost multi-use card system, where in order to play a card, you need to pay for that card with other cards. And the fact that these cards go into a kind of a common display adds another wrinkle to the strategy, because you might think that, you know, I really know my opponents are going for the butterflies, and I've just played a butterfly that they want. I don't really want it myself, but do I want to put it in the common display because they're just going to grab it and then start using that to score points for themselves? At the same time, you might be able to use this tactically by thinking there's quite a few cards in the display here. If I buy a more expensive card now and spend a card that somebody else wants, I know that the central reserve here is going to get wiped. Therefore, my opponent's going to lose the opportunity to grab the card that I've just used to pay and for another card with. So definitely wrinkles of gameplay here. I think the player engagement of this game is generally very good. You know, the turns themselves are very rapid, and a lot of the time you're just drawing cards. So, you know, the turns don't really take too long until it gets back round to you. At the same time, the game doesn't go on too long. You know, you are looking at slightly longer than an average card game here. You know, 45 minutes to an hour, maybe a bit shorter with 2 players, maybe a bit longer if you're playing with the full 5 players. But it does feel like you've got a lot to sink your teeth into within that time frame here. Again, the downtime isn't too bad. And the actual player interaction is okay. As I said, it mostly leans towards that shared carpool, which I think is a great addition to the game, actually. And it makes again, it makes that consequence of what you're paying for a lot more interesting, because you're not just throwing cards away into the abyss not to be used again, as a lot of card games tend to do. I think I personally really appreciate these extra touches. They give you just an extra thing to think about. I think the replayability here is excellent. I mean, there are so many different things you can go for. And of course, you're going to be tactically reacting to the cards that you have in your hand, knowing which order to play these in, knowing which ones to throw away, which to keep hold of, trying not to clog up your hand too much. Yeah, there are so many things you need to consider at all times. Yes, you can go for a strategy, but you are going to have to kind of pivot. And, if you are starting to fill your hand up with a certain type of card, you might want to start leaning towards that strategy instead of the one that you intended in the first place. But yeah, generally speaking, there are so many different synergies here. And yeah, what I've showed you here is just scratching the surface in terms of the scoring opportunities that lies within this huge deck of cards. The production for this game is decent. The cards are, they're fine quality. They're not linen finished, but they look fantastic. You can see here just from me showing you that the artwork on these cards is quite spectacular. I love the way that the cards tuck behind each of the trees. It just looks really neat when it's on the table. It is going to be a bit of a table hog, so be prepared for that, because each player's forest is going to get quite large. The actual little card sheet here is quite nice because it fits exactly 10 cards on it if you lie them next to each other like this. So you can easily track when it's time to wipe off that kind of central reserve there. Yeah, generally speaking, I've got no issues with the production at all. You've got tons of cards here. Yes, the card quality could be a bit better, but the game itself is quite affordable, and it's just all nicely put together, very nicely illustrated. Okay, so let's share some final thoughts on Forest Shuffle. And man, am I impressed with this one. This one kind of came out of nowhere for me because I wasn't really monitoring it, but it came up on my radar. I thought I'd take a look at it because I love card games. I love set collection games, and this one is amongst the best I've played, to be honest. It is so interesting how some of these cards work, and the idea of you building several sets at the same time is just so it's so satisfying, because sometimes you're playing a card for its ability and you think, well, that's a great ability in itself, but then you think, well, that's actually synergizing with 3 other cards that I've already played, as well as 2 more that I still need to play. So you're always constantly adding and almost compounding the points you're getting on each other. And at the end of the game, when you're calculating all those points, it gets so cool when you realize how many points you've kind of extorted from a single card. Now, the only criticism I would say is that the end game scoring can be quite fiddly because there are so many different categories going on at the same time. I personally don't mind that, but I can see that a lot of people might find that a bit tedious at times and might want like a quick solution. But that's part and parcel of the game. If you want a game of this magnitude, which is kind of the unique selling point in this game, is that you are collecting so many sets at the same time, you need to be prepared that the scoring might be a little bit longer than what you're used to. But personally, I love the variability here. I love the card tucking system. I love that every facet of the game scores. I love the shared card row. I love the interaction in terms of that card row. Grabbing what you want and being careful not to do things at the right time when your opponent wants a certain card. It almost reminds me a little bit of Ethnos, when you're playing those big plays and you flood the market full of cards that other people might want. But yeah, for me, I think this game is 2 thumbs up. I think it is great. It looks gorgeous, and again, just so much fun to play. So yeah, definitely gets my recommendations and a chairman's commendation. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is going to be in my top 5 of the year. I've not played all the Essen releases yet. In fact, I've played hardly any of them, but I like this game so much, and that's coming from someone who's played a ton of set collection games. I'm very picky over the card games that I have in my collection, and this one is a no-brainer. It's gone straight in, and I am really kind of champing at the bit to get this one back to the table because I have enjoyed it that much. And yeah, definitely going to be top 10 of the year, and I'll be surprised if it doesn't make my top 5. So that is Forest Shuffle.